Chapter 3. Returning to the Garden of Eden. God planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the human he had formed. From a strictly materialistic perspective, science has debunked most of traditional cosmology. However, as discussed in the previous chapter, the highest level of biblical interpretation has been left intact by scientific discovery. Moreover, this level is the only one that truly matters from a spiritual perspective because it fully encapsulates the meaning of humanity within creation. Unfortunately, the higher level of interpretation have been marginalized in recent times because of the scientific ability to explain phenomena exclusively in terms of matter and mechanical causality. Nevertheless, it is a mistake to interpret the Bible using a scientific model of the universe instead of its own cosmological perspective, no matter how archaic it may appear to modern sensibilities. Admittedly, interpreting the Bible with its own cosmology is a difficult task because our current worldview has little in common with the assigned perspective. This huge discrepancy was inevitable because we arrived at it by artificially warping our natural perceptions with the telescopes and microscopes. At this point, humanity has opened its eyes to such an extent that our conceptions of space and time corresponds to the point of view of an alien robot gazing at our solar system from a far away region. To rediscover the biblical point of view, we must pretend that our eyes are not geared with thousands of telescopes and microscopes, and that we care little for quasars and quarks. Moreover, we will need to reposition ourselves within space and time by looking past the heliocentric and geocentric viewpoints toward an ancient cosmology. This archaic worldview may be described as three-centric or tetracentric for lack of a better word. We will temporarily adopt this perspective to rediscover ancient biblical cosmology and reclaim its metaphysical foundations. Chapter 4. Restructuring the language of creation. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Rediscovering the biblical perspective will be the equivalent of learning an entirely new language, because all the concepts will need to be redefined according to the spiritual worldview. Most importantly, the words heaven and earth, as quoted in the verse above, can longer refer to what we now call heaven and earth. From our scientific viewpoint, the third planet from the Sun and its atmosphere. Instead, the archaic concept of earth refers to the lower material half of the entire universe, and the archaic concept of heaven refers to the upper spiritual half. In general, a complete redefinition of cosmic categories like heaven, earth, time, and space will be needed. The implications of these concepts will then trickle down to every level of human experience to redefine all things in the context of the Bible. To simulate an immersion into the archaic perspective of Genesis, visual aids will always accompany the text of this commentary. These diagrams will emulate the preconceived conditioning that time and space imposes on the human mind. In parallel, another didactic tool, single quotation marks, will be used to highlight distinction between current concepts and their ancient counterparts in the Bible. For example, in the following quotation, God prepared a great fish to swallow Jonah, and he was in the belly of the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. The word fish has been highlighted with a single quote to distinguish the archaic concept of fish from a modern taxonomical definition: a gill-bearing aquatic craniate animal that lacks limbs with digits. Instead, a more ancient concept should be assumed, one that certainly included such animals as dolphin, whales, and other aquatic creatures. Of course, neither of the definitions is correct or incorrect. They are simply based on different cosmologies. Modern taxonomical definitions are grounded in evolutionary science, while ancient bestiaries were answering the questions: what spiritual truth does this animal embody? The breath of God, however, over the face of the waters. In the verse above, the concept of water perfectly illustrates the need to recover the meaning of ancient cosmological concepts. Indeed, from a scientific perspective, the definitions of water can easily be given as H2O, which is simply its chemical composition. However, this type of definitions only answers the questions: what is it made of, and how does it work? These are the only concerns of the materialistic perspective. On the other hand, the biblical concept of water certainly had nothing to do with its chemical composition. Therefore, it would be naive to assume that the concept of water in the Bible necessarily refers to the same substance as its modern counterpart. Instead, it is perfectly conceivable that water was synonymous with our current notions of liquid, of fluid, which have much broader definitions. If this were the case, then there would have been many different varieties of water, meaning liquids in the ancient conception, including blood, wine, urine, milk, mercury, and many other fluids. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Similarly, from the scientific perspective, a working definition of the light would be as follows: electromagnetic radiation with a wavelength in the range of 4,000 to 7,700 angstroms. As expected, since physics studies matter and its interactions, this concept has been framed by materialistic parameters. On the other hand, the concept of light was framed by meaning rather than mechanism in ancient cosmology. Hence, there were probably many variants of light in that context, and not all of them were made of photons. The main point of these examples is the demonstrated the naivety of assuming that ancient words had the same meaning as their modern counterparts. In reality, there are tremendous gaps between ancient and modern definitions, such as that every word must be reconstructed within the framework of an archaic cosmology. The distinctions between ancient and current concepts will not always be as clear as the examples provided in this chapter. Therefore, the reader may legitimately doubt the validity of this reconstructed language. However, as will be discovered in the following sections, their words will be entirely derived from the cosmological categories of the Bible: heaven, earth, time, and space, as described in the narrative of creation. In addition, the Bible itself will serve as testing ground for this reconstructed language, as it's used to interpret its stories, rituals, and laws. For the reader, this will be the ultimate test as whether this language of creation fully recaptures the biblical worldview. If all goes well, formally cryptic text should begin to make perfect sense, even to the point of becoming self-evident.